Ja, hallo, schön, dass ihr wieder da seid. Diese Folge des Podcasts ist ein Throwback in das Jahr 2018, also besser gesagt in den Dezember 2018. Dort habe ich gesprochen mit Frau Prof. Dr. Tanja Bipp. Sie war damals noch Professorin an der Julius-Maximilians-Universität für IO Psychology. Mittlerweile ist sie gewechselt an die Universität in Heidelberg, betreut dort aber auch das Feld Arbeits- und Organisationspsychologie und betreut ganz, ganz spannende Themen, die insbesondere für mich als Volkswirt an der Schnittstelle zur Wirtschaftspsychologie unheimlich spannend und interessant waren. Wir haben gesprochen über die Themen Skills und Competences in der Zukunft, also was müssen die Leute mitbringen. Wir haben über digitale Transformation und das Phänomen des Job-Grafting gesprochen, also wir haben neue Ressourcen und wie kann man sich daraus den bestmöglichen Arbeitsplatz oder die Arbeitsbedingungen bauen. Der Output und die Kreativität stehen dabei natürlich im Vordergrund. Es geht aber auch um das Thema der Identifikation und die Leidenschaft für die Arbeit und den Job, den ich mache. Wir haben auch über das Thema Occupational Health, also die Gesundheit im Berufskontext gesprochen und wie Technologien dazu beitragen können, hier einen Mehrwert für die Personen zu leisten und zu liefern. Also nicht nur eben den Druck erhöhen, indem der digitale Wandel alles schneller macht, sondern auch wie neue Technologien einen Mehrwert bringen. Also gerade im Lernbereich sehe ich insbesondere im Virtual und Augmented Reality Bereich ganz große Potenziale, aber wir sehen natürlich auch gerade jetzt in der Pandemie, dass diese digitalen Kanäle, wenn wir jetzt merken und uns einspielen, wie man sie nutzen, für uns doch schon neue Freiheitsgrade bringen. Auf der anderen Seite habe ich nochmal das Thema Lifelong Learning aufgegriffen mit Frau Professor Bipp und darüber gesprochen, wie wir es schaffen, diese intrinsische Motivation bei Leuten zu erhöhen und zu wecken, ständig am Ball zu bleiben, immer sich weiterzuentwickeln, zu lernen, was am Ende des Tages natürlich für die Person selbst einen Mehrwert bringt, aber für die Arbeitgeber dann auch. So, das war eine ganz spannende Episode, deshalb kommt sie hier nochmal rein und ich würde mich sehr gerne freuen, wenn Feedback eurerseits kommt. Jetzt bleibt gesund und bis bald. You already mentioned some tasks that are getting along more importance during the time of digital transformation, and this relates to a research project that you are currently on with several projects here from Würzburg.
Yeah.
Can you give us more details a little bit in this field of research or project?
Yeah, we started this project like last year, and we now have 2 PhD students working on that, particularly focusing on the individual level, so the individual employee, co-worker, and how change, especially in like small and medium-sized companies, how they are affected by that. So one part of the project concentrates indeed on what do people need nowadays in terms of competence to deal with these kind of technologies. So are there certain skills, competencies they need, and how can they be built sustainable, so that they also last, so not something, because we mentioned already the fast changing technologies, so it's not necessary that you have specific knowledge about something at one point, because over 2-3 years it might be outdated, but it's more about having the attitude to critically evaluate information, for example, stemming from all these media, there's a lot of information coming in, you have to digest it or sort it out. So what do you need to do that to efficiently deal with this mass of information, like a critical also attitude, judging the information, so how true, untrue are different sources of information and stuff like that. So one part of the project is about that. And we're currently working on like a model. So what does it encompass, this digital competence for grown-ups? There's a lot of research in school, and you've all heard about the names digital natives and the new generation coming up. But what about the people currently in the labor market? What do they need? And we are currently investigating, especially people like clerical desk work, like white-collar workers, as we call them, so people sitting in an office. So what do they need that they are really prepared for the future? Yeah.
Do you have first results, which would interest me? Which competencies? You mentioned some. I think this is no secret that this is probably the most important thing that people learn or are aware that they need to critical think about different topics, and they get different topics together, see the interconnections, and understanding of processes, and this is very important, I think. And this is also one approach that I try to implement in my small module and lecture that I give also. I don't want to learn the students the theory and large text blocks that they just give back in the exam. I want them to understand what I teach them, and therefore I try to combine theory a little bit, because this is important. I think maybe this is also one result, that you need the basics,
of course.
And then you need to understand the techniques and how you implement, and then I try to give insights how it works in practice. So how do firms analyze data? And so I put it together. I don't know if it works, but I think the students are interested.
We are currently kind of like working on a model, and we also found, there's a lot of literature out there, but not very scientifically on that. So we're kind of the first tapping into that to really take a scientific approach also, because we have the idea we also then want to measure this kind of these digital competencies. How can they be measured and improved? How can you really in the long run develop yourself in it? So as I said, we just started with this project, so at the moment we just have the idea. Indeed, there are some like rudimentary competencies you might need in all kinds of jobs, and then there are very specific ones, depending on the type of occupation.
Of course, the ICT competences, programming is, even if it's just the understanding about programming, and maybe understanding technologies, what are the implications, what's behind it, and how does it affect my field of work. Maybe this is one result that's getting important.
And like over a year, hopefully have detailed results on how to measure and progress in that.
So we have to record a part 2 of the podcast.
Exactly. The other part of the project, because we have 2 projects in there, is really tapping into this idea of job design and how, we don't know how jobs will look like in the future. Probably all the stuff we're talking about flexible work and working everywhere, anytime, this will be normal in 10 to 20 years probably for everyone. But we're still looking into that. How can we support people in using this idea of, that technologies are not only a new demand, like pressuring demand that's put on you, but it can also be a resource. What I said with the paradox. But the idea is, how do we get people to see the resources and really make use of them? So in the second project, we look at that and what people can do themselves. So not the organization designing jobs, how it should look like, but what can each employee, her or himself do? And this is called in the literature or the term job crafting, you might have heard before. This is actually the idea that employees craft, they adjust the job according to their personal needs and interests.
But this has not just a physical component, but also mental component.
Exactly. It's about, of course, the job you are doing, the task you are doing. For example, you like some tasks more than others. So you might spend more time with those you like, and the other ones, you still have to do that, or somebody else has to do it. Or it's about relationships. Look at you. I would say you are a job crafter. You expanded your job, and you talk to people. You make connections that are probably not totally necessary to do your job that you are paid for, but because you like it, and because you're interested in it, and so it fulfills you. It gives your work meaning, and therefore you are motivated, and then your engagement is higher, your satisfaction is higher, and therefore it has positive effects on productivity. That's what we know. But there's also this component: how do I think about my job? And this is called cognitive crafting. So do I know what my job has an impact on others, or how it impacts society, and how do you think about yourself? So even this research started in hospitals with cleaning personnel, and they had really different views about their job. Some were just like, okay, I'm getting paid to clean here, and others were like, no, I contribute to the health of patients. So it's really about how you see your job and impacts others. And we are trying to apply this concept of job crafting to this idea of digitalization and support people in craft in a positive way their jobs.
This is a lot of coaching in it as well, right? because you have to change sometimes the mindset of the people. As you just said, that's totally right. I can say right. This is because I'm passionate for what I'm doing here besides my job, and I don't have to do that, but I'm learning every second, and this fulfills me, and I'm making great connections with nice people and learn a lot. But that's why I try to maybe give something back with the podcast format, but also with a lecture for my students to make them develop passion for themselves, because that's what I see. If you want to bring the people, or make them bring the best effort and contribution, they have to do it with passion. Yeah. I mean, you cannot always do something with passion. If I have to write a letter that I don't know what to write, that's there's organizational work always, but there's a mindset component which is very important.
Yeah, you need to be aware, of course, kind of like be aware for yourself. So what is important for you? What do you want to do? And try to incorporate that. I mean, there's also a little bit of downside of this job crafting thing we know also from research, because I mean, if now just anybody crafts his or her job and just does the stuff he or she likes, of course they're a task over and somebody else has to do it. So we know that people who craft a lot has an impact on the burnout of their colleagues, or can be. So because tasks perhaps leaving over, or that you get yourself overwhelmed because you find these and these things interesting, you do actually more than you need to, and then there's still a lot of work to do, and this on top of it. So you also have to find a balance for yourself. But this is what I said earlier, there's no solution that fits all. Everyone has to discover herself or himself what is important, and supporting people in this process actually is the idea of kind of stimulating job crafting.
I'm very excited about the approach that some companies give workers some time to do own projects. Yeah. Maybe this is also one part that would fit in here, right?
Yeah, because a lot of companies are convinced, they give you just time, do whatever you want for your personal interests, and most companies indeed see that what people are doing in this time actually benefits the company. So it benefits also like the teams, we call it organizational citizenship behavior. People contribute to the team, to the organization on top of what is officially expected from them, from their job descriptions. And this, of course, has a positive impact on the organization as a whole. So there is definitely positive consequences of that, not only for the person, but also for the organization.
And you said you also do research on work and health, and this is also, again, very connected to what you just talked before, right? Can you give us some examples in this?
Actually, indeed, it's really deeply connected, because we know, there was a whole research tradition on work motivation, and this has been going on for really 60, 70 years in IO psychology, and also on occupational health. But like recently, these topics have combined because people realized, okay, you cannot deal with one without the other. So at the moment, like the most prominent model with regard to stress, or also like health issues in IO psychology, is about indeed the balance of job demands and resources. So there needs to be a balance. So there are different demands, physical ones, the heat going on, or really, for example, in the hospital, really lifting patients, physical demands, also cognitive or emotional demands, working with patients that are dying, for example, in the hospital can be very, very intense. And you need resources to deal with them. If you don't have them, we know it has negative impact on your health. You get burned out, you're getting sick, you're staying away from work, and basically has negative consequences. And on the other hand, when we have the resources, or even more resources than we need, then there's a positive effect on motivation.
But if we look at that, there with the technological process and digital transformation, there are huge opportunities as well, right?
Exactly.
When you look at the cobots, robots working together with people, where the robots support people lifting, this is one big benefit. So the technological side is not just the dark side; it has a lot of upside as well.
Exactly.
And supporting, especially also in training, I would say. When we look at technologies that are on the verge or just already in use, like VR or AR, and where critical tasks can be trained. We can look at doctors that could train an operation, or people working at electricity, and then they can train it, and then they won't die in the first instance, but they can train. And it takes a little pressure. Maybe this is also don't have to do the mistake to overlook that and to overemphasize the negative and the fear.
Yeah, and there has been in the past like a focus on really the problems, disruptions at work, and stress and interfering work-life balance issues, because you're taking work back home and so forth. But like the last couple of years, there has been growing interest in how can it benefit. And how can you make use of that? Because you have more freedom, you are connected, you have access to a lot of information. You just need to use them efficiently to deal with the problems. So seeing it as a resource, that's perhaps the challenge for every one of us, to finding really how can technology help me.
I would agree. There are a lot of challenges, of course, and we have to take them serious. Because otherwise this would be a bad damage for the system and the workers. But we shouldn't forget the upsides, and we should use it.
Exactly.
And this is important. A very big aspect in the consequence, I would say, is the learning aspect. Because when we talked, we have these different working setups, and the speed is going up, communication is faster, and people have to learn, I would say, lifelong, if you look at this development. And you already mentioned before, it's not just for the generations that come in the labor market or on the jump, also for the people who are already in there. So how would you see the aspect of learning?
I would also say it's very, very important. I mean, but I think also now the generation like leaving university, they already now have the idea, okay, learning hasn't stopped by then. I still need to do that. But the companies still also need to stimulate that, I would say. We know from research of psychology that, of course, a lot of factors influence learning. They are on the side of the person. There might be persons learning faster, they can digest more information and stuff like that, but it's also the situation. And we are also looking in another project how companies can really stimulate learning, how they can support it. And by that I don't necessarily mean like official formal learning programs. Most of the companies have that, but how do you motivate people to use them and really think for themselves or outside the box, indeed, what else do I need? And how can I do that? And there indeed the supervisor comes in again that really needs to support this process.
And how does I know, because I've read, e-learning plays a big role in this context, because it's more flexible, and this could be one very important aspect. And I mean, a lot of companies were interested in doing that with the whole idea of e-learning coming up, and there were also hesitations about that because, okay, you need to first invest a lot of money and stuff like that. The systems that are out there are like mocks and whatever. I mean, there is a lot of information. The problem is more getting people to use them. Motivate the people to use them, right?
Indeed, and really finish classes, for example. We know people click a lot and they look, and then they lose interest and then it's gone, but really make use out of that and continually doing that. That's more of the challenge we are facing. You need kind of a more higher intrinsic motivation to keep going. And how can you stimulate that?
But this is the toughest part,
yes.
I would say. That's a question that I think about a lot. How do you bring the people to really recognize that they have to do it for themselves, but also, and in the second step, it is for the company.
Yes.
And this is so difficult, but I don't know, it's the role of leaders and teachers to inspire people and to show which tasks are interesting, and to bring the people to find their passion maybe as well.
Exactly. Also what interests them. Find, I would say again, set for themselves learning goals, what they want to develop. We know it's also important to set goals for the transfer. Once you learn something, you watch the podcast, what do you do with that? So, okay, think about, for example, this podcast. What do you make out of that? So, an idea, how can I apply this in my daily work? And think about that, and remind yourself after 2 weeks, were I able to do that? Why not? What can I do differently to really transfer this knowledge?
Ich hoffe, euch hat es gefallen. Mir hat es auf jeden Fall unheimlich viel Spaß gemacht und nicht ohne Grund habe ich das hier nochmal als Throwback-Episode mit reingebracht in den Podcast Arbeit, Bildung, Zukunft. Und natürlich bin ich auch immer offen und freue mich sehr, wenn vielleicht sogar nochmal eine Follow-up-Aufnahme mit Frau Professor Bipp stattfinden würde, denn sie hat ganz spannende Themen und ich kann nur empfehlen, ihr zu folgen auf allen möglichen Social-Media-Kanälen. Jetzt bleibt gesund und bis zum nächsten Mal. Macht's gut.